Welcome to Echoes from the Battlefield, where untold stories of courage, sacrifice, and brotherhood are brought to light, straight from those who lived them and experienced them. Today's episode is titled My Own Band of Brothers, a powerful tribute to Alpha Company, Task Force Snowflake 1st Brigade Combat Team 101st Airborne Division. I'm your host Nasirullah Jan Safi, a former combat military interpreter, wounded in service, sharing an eyewitness account from June 2010, perhaps the deadliest time for Combat Outpost Monti deep in the Hindu Kush Mountains in eastern Afghanistan. Let's talk about 101st Airborne Divisions for a little bit because I did not know anything about them prior to their arrival. Captain Uter invited us to watch a couple of movies about the 101st Airborne Division when they first arrived at Monti. Born and raised during the Taliban regime, were not allowed to watch movies or even listen to music on the radio, so I always enjoyed watching movies. The movie that Captain Uter talked about was Bands of Brothers. I had seen it before, but I didn't realize it was about the 101st Airborne Division. I appreciated the fearless fighting in the movie, but I also knew that the sort of battle that the 101st Airborne would face in the Hindu Kush Mountains would be dramatically different because it has been many years at Monti prior to their arrival. The 101st Airborne is known in the US military for their assault operations, Captain Uter said. Captain Uter was in his late 50s and I called him the history book. He had tons of experience in deep military knowledge. I feel like I was taking a history class at school whenever I asked him about something because he loved to get questions and answer them. What about the eagle patch on the soldier's arms? I asked him after the movie. He looked at me and said, John, you're asking a lot of questions. Oh, I forgot to tell you that the 101st Airborne Division is also known as the Screaming Eagles, Captain Uter explained with a big smile on his face. I learned a lot about the 101st Airborne and I couldn't wait to start working and supporting them in their daily patrols, missions, and operations. The 101st Airborne would become a big part of the air assault missions and operations against the Taliban, Al-Qaeda, and other terrorists deep in the Hindu Kush Mountains and along the line between Afghanistan and Pakistan's tribal area, also known as Fatah, a hotbed of insurgents. It was time to become part of the real stories in fighting. This wouldn't be a movie. June 2010 was the deadliest and most dangerous time for Combat Outpost Monti, and by the end of the month, some of the incredible, brave soldiers from Alpha Company 327 Infantry lost their lives. They died tragically in IED strike. On June 7, 2010, 2nd Platoon was to head out to secure Dab Valley in Buralohor for a key leader engagement with local residents and tribal elders. Lieutenant Colonel Babel was the battalion commander leading the meeting, which aimed to discuss security and potential projects with local residents and tribal elders. It was a beautiful sunny day at Combat Outpost Monti, but we hadn't received enemy contact, no rockets, no income, which was not normal. I got done with breakfast and was leaving the chow hall when I saw First Sergeant Robert walk in with his full gear on. He was a great man who took great care of his soldiers. He was brave and funny and always had a smile on his face whenever I met him. John, how do you like working for us? He asked me a few days before this horrible mission. I looked at him. I love it, First Sergeant. That is awesome. I'm glad you like working for us, he replied while I was talking with Captain Michael and Company Executive Officer Cody Grimm. John, don't listen to him, Grimm jokes. John is my favorite interpreter, First Sergeant Robert replied. I worked a lot with Captain Michael, Captain Grimm, and First Sergeant Rob, and I was looking forward to learning from their experience. Around 8 a.m. I grabbed my body armor and radio and headed to the gazebo table where I was supposed to meet with Captain Michael and the rest of the platoon, while First Sergeant Barton and 2nd Platoon had already gone. The gazebo table was a smoking area meeting table in a briefing spot where Captain Michael often met his Afghan counterparts, Afghan government officials, and tribal elders because it was right outside of the Tactical Operation Command or TOC. When I arrived, we made our way to the vehicles and hopped in. We were still waiting on Captain Michael, who was behind talking with Captain Grimm. Suddenly I saw Captain Michael run back to the TOC, but he returned to the truck in less than a minute. I thought he had forgotten something. He opened the door and got in the truck while I was talking with Sergeant Horton. God damn it. Captain Michael yelled while beating the dashboard of the MTV truck. I can't believe it, he was talking to himself. I didn't know what was going on until Sergeant Horton said, First Sergeant's truck got hit by an IED, or improvised explosive devices. I could not believe what had just happened. This must be a joke, because I just saw Sergeant Robert in the chow hall and talked to him for a bit before he went out. All at once, too many thoughts flooded in my mind about First Sergeant Robert. I saw him the night before playing with Captain Grimm and other soldiers in the building hall where the soldiers had wrapped him in a body bag while others pulled it back and forth on the concrete floor just joking around. Loud music was blaring and they were having so much fun. This was what helped cope with the constant fighting, stress, and loneliness at Combat Outpost Monti in the middle of nowhere. Now I simply couldn't believe that First Sergeant Robert was no longer with us along with 4 other incredible soldiers. We finally left Monti with the devastating news of our loss hanging over the tracks. Everyone was heartbroken and mourning everything that had happened. Captain Michael was angry and emotional. He kept punching the dashboard of the MTV truck and talking to himself while the rest of us were speechless. It was a short drive but felt like it took forever. When we arrived at the scene of the attack, we were still in shock. The beautiful, sunny day no longer seemed beautiful. The smiles on the soldiers' faces had turned into tears and heartache. A whole part of the dirt road was destroyed by the Taliban's IED. It looked like a big rectangular hole that had been excavated by roadwork machine. The entire Humvee truck was gone. You wouldn't have known that it ever existed. Everyone searched for the soldiers that had tragically lost their lives. Some pieces of the truck landed in the craggy mountains facing flowing river. While everyone was looking for the rest of the truck, I saw Lieutenant Colonel Bobble, the battalion commander, standing in the cold water in the river. He was looking for his soldiers and pulling out pieces of the truck. In that moment, watching Lieutenant Colonel Bobble, I learned the true meaning of leadership. Colonel Bobble was a great commander, leader, and friend that I have heard both officers and non-commissioned officers at Combat Outpost Monti speak well of. Lieutenant Colonel Bobble was not only a great leader or commander, he was a fearless soldier who always fought with great honor, dignity, respect, and courage against insurgents. I had the privilege to work with Lieutenant Colonel Bobble and supported him and his soldiers in many operations and daily missions. I had heard the word leadership for many years, but never understood what it really meant until that day. It was honor and privilege to work beside First Sergeant Robert and his soldiers, who I accompanied in many operations and daily patrols before they died in a tragic IED attack. We honored them by living a good and honorable life, for their sacrifices was not in vain. First Sergeant Robert, killed in action, June 7, 2010. Sergeant Joshua, June 7, 2010. Specialist Matthew, June 7, 2010. Specialist Charles, June 7, 2010. And Specialist Blaine, June 7, 2010. In every battlefield, there are names that stay with you, etched into your heart. For today's episode, for Sergeant and his incredible soldiers. First Sergeant Robert was not just a leader, he was a brother, and this was his band of brothers. Stay tuned for the next episode of Echoes from the Battlefield, where I uncover the untold story behind the tragic IED attack, who was responsible, how were they brought to justice, and what consequences they face. It is a story of accountability, pursuit, and a promise kept to the fallen. You won't want to miss it. If this story moved you, please consider sharing it in honoring the heroes we have lost and those still serving in silence. Until next time, stay strong, stay true, and never